And not only that with the Beatles, it's the evolution of their music. When you think about that evolution from from around that time, Rubber Soul 1965, and then Revolver 1966, and then to 1967, Sergeant Pepper. I mean, you know that's just incredible. And I remember saying that to a friend of mine who he's really into Queen. That's his group. I just remember saying to him, met man one time, that evolution from when they were doing the Sergeant Pepper and all that kind of all of a sudden now they're doing all that psychedelic. They've got all that psychedelic sounds. That's just amazing. And when you think about it, have other bands evolved? Like the Beatles when it comes to their music. You know, like take bands like U2, Coldplay. I don't think they a lot of it for me. I think their sound for the most part's kind of been the same. Okay, maybe Coldplay has changed up theirs a bit, but has it got better overall? I know they do work with modern writers. They had that. They worked with that was it the chain smokers and that, and it's not bad music, but did they really evolve like the Beatles evolved? I don't think so. And then there's another thing that's a little bit questionable. There's a song, Michelle. That's the one. That McCartney sings. He's singing a little bit in French. Now, did McCartney really know French that well? I mean, because back then in like the late 50s, early 60s, when you're at school, college, whatever, would there have been many like teachers that would have been doing these languages? Would you've had French teachers, German teachers, Spanish teachers, etc., back then in the UK? I'm not sure. But then with Michelle, I know George Martin said that he had played guitar on that song. The solo bit, he did that, and then Harrison, performed it on the track. But that was, that's his composition. But also, and I mean, with the Beatles, I mean, and there's you'll see the videos on YouTube. It does sound some of their songs very similar to other songs from late 50s, early 60s. I think it was the one. It's the Drive My Car song. And the bass and the guitar riff, they got that from Otis Redding, Respect. And it always stood out to me that, I mean, Drive My Car is one of my favourite songs. I really like that one. But there was a song when anytime I would hear that, it sounded very familiar. It's for example, I know in hip hop, when hip hop started in the 70s in the Bronx, Apache, the Shadows, the guitar, that was very popular. The DJs loved using that, and that's the one that's on what is it? Jump on it, that one. And it always, I remember hearing that at the time, Jump on it. I think, hang on a minute, that sounds very familiar. And it's like that thing I think I had with Drive My Car. But also, you had Bernard, the story about Bernard Purdie, who's a drummer. He was a drummer, Aretha Franklin's drummer for, oh God, I think it was about 25 years. He was her drummer, and he had come out and said that he was the drummer on 21 Beatles tracks. And I think this would have been in the early days. So, he's claiming this, and I think, well, would he really lie? Would he really make that up? He could be exaggerating, but, he's claimed this, and, he's stuck by it apparently over the years, and he said that, basically that Ringo was not really that good at all, when it came to being a drummer. But also the thing with the Beatles was, Beatles back in the 60s, they were just like when I say this, like the other groups, they were, enjoying the party life, they called it the swinging 60s back then. It was the drinking, it was the drugs, it was the girls, and that's the thing with the Beatles is that are we supposed to believe that they were the hardest working band, but at the same time they're doing all this drinking, smoking, drug taking, all this partying, because that you think it would probably mess with your creativity a bit when you're doing all that stuff, all the partying. You might get a little bit lazy, you know. Another point, apparently with the song Yesterday, you know, maybe it could be very well, it's possible that maybe Yesterday, George Martin might have helped write that song. There was an interview that he had done, and Howard Goodall was the guy's name, a composer himself and a broadcaster. He was interviewing, and he was interviewing him specifically about all his compositions he had done and songs he produced over his career. And then they get to Yesterday, and he was saying, Goodall was saying that Yesterday sounded kind of like, I think it was Lutheran / Anglican, you know, like music you would hear at a church service. And starts playing it on the piano, and then you see George Martin kind of just sits up. You know, it was like he wasn't expecting that question. And then all of a sudden you see it's like he has his finger to his lips. Right away, it's like his finger goes to his lips. And apparently, you know, this is according to Mike Williams, that's like a Freemason sign. And when you do that, that's a sign not to reveal any secrets. So I don't know if that's something that's like a psychological thing that they do. So all of a sudden they're doing that, and it's like they're making that all of a sudden when you do that, you're promising yourself, no, I'm not going to reveal any secrets. Or that's something, you know, you tell your other, you know, and your other Mason brothers, so to speak, no, hey, don't worry, I'm not going to reveal anything. It maybe could be both, I don't know. But and I think George Martin, he's come out and said that he played he used he was the idea for the string quartet that came in just near the start of the song. But then he was telling McCartney, you don't really need anything else, I think, with piano or whatever, you know, just play the song on a guitar, acoustic guitar. But also, you know, with George Martin, he said at the start he thought the Beatles were rubbish, you know? And that's another thing. It's like, you know, 1962, when he first sees them, he says they're rubbish. And then it's like all of a sudden from 1962 to 1964, then you can go to 65, all of a sudden they become incredible, they're amazing. It's like, wow, that's quite a leap. That's quite a quantum leap to go from rubbish to great, don't you think? And then you had Quincy Jones. Quincy Jones called them no playing MFers. Now, the thing with a guy like Quincy Jones, you know, a legendary producer, you know, a black man like Quincy Jones wouldn't exactly have Beatles up on the same pedestal, you know, compared to white people. Maybe that's maybe a bit of a generalization. I know, I'm sure there's a lot of, you know, black people who are big fans of the Beatles, and listen, a lot of white people fans of black artists. You know, Michael Jackson's one of my favorites. You know, but I know he's also talked about, you know, saying, you know, that basically Ringo just, when he was in the studio in 1970, he just basically, in his mind, he just couldn't really drum, and he wasn't really that good of a drummer. But, and I want to get onto the film, the Let It Be film. In the Let It Be film, that shows Paul leading the way. But the thing was, you know, at the start of the band, John Lennon, he was the leader. And there's an interesting little, you hear, it sounds like George Martin's referring to Paul as William. There's a certain clip, there's one clip that I remember seeing, and this kind of plays into the whole thing, who, you know, was he replaced Paul? But the thing with that though, that clip, it could have been possible it was Ringo saying it. You know, people are certain people, the Paul is dead conspiracy people, they seem to think it was George Martin saying it, and then all of a sudden Paul McCartney turns around after he hears William. But it sounded to me like there could have been Ringo saying William to someone else, basically to somebody else who was in the room, who's called William. So I wasn't quite sure about that one. But then, you know, this film though, from the Let It Be film that was released in 1970, it was reworked, and it's on Disney Plus. It's the Get Back film. That Peter Jackson, he's reworked that, and I think he's done a really good job, and it's been real mastered. There's a lot of unseen footage. But the weird thing is with that is when it was released, right? The day of the release was the same day. It was the birthday of Aleister Crowley, and Aleister Crowley's that guy, that occultist, Satanist type. So that's a little bit, I don't know, of a weird kind of coincidence. But the thing is with this whole thing about the Billy thing, and I'll get onto that. It's the whole the theory about basically that Paul McCartney, the biological Paul McCartney, so to speak, he had died in 1966. It was in a car accident, but really, I mean, it was intentional. People were out. They wanted to take him out, killed him, and then he was replaced. And it was replaced someone by the name of William Shepherd, who was a Scottish guy. And that, I think, explains why all of a sudden McCartney had this affinity for Scotland. He went out, got a farm in Scotland, seemed to really love Scotland. Had the whole song about 10 years later when he's with Wings, Mall of Kintyre. Real Scottish sounding kind of song. But, I mean, to me, it's quite an out there theory. I do find that hard to believe. But, I mean, I'll say this much. There are photos from around 1966 after Paul allegedly had this crash. It does, when you see these photos, you look at yourself, well, maybe he does kind of look a little bit different. Like, facial features does look a little bit different. Hair looks a little bit different. And there is one photo that always sticks out to me when it's a photo that's him and Lennon are in. And then when I look at his hair, I think, God, that doesn't look like your real hair, man. That looks like a wig. You know what I mean? And who knows? I mean, maybe they did opt to wear a wig. Maybe they were just kind of going for like a different look because all of a sudden it was the whole Sergeant Pepper. That was the whole the gimmick with that album. The outfits they wore and all there's different colors and that. But the thing is, I mean, there are clips, and I've seen clips looking online, and it does look like there are some clips where you look at them and you think, wow, that could be a different person. And I think this is used a lot in like Hollywood and films and that. There's this latex makeup you can use, and then you can get it over your skin or right over you to make it look like you're someone else, and it's very convincing. There's a short video clip, and I'll leave the link in the description, of the Colombian actress Sofia Vergara, and there's a short 20-second clip of her, and at the start it looks like it's Emma Watson, the actress, Hermione Granger, Harry Potter, and you're dead certain if you saw that clip at the first, you think, well, that's definitely Emma Watson. It can't be anybody else, and then all of a sudden she takes all this off right over her head, and it's not. It's Sofia Vergara. It's like, wow, But then it's possible though that might not just be the case, that it's like someone, he had a replacement and whatever. It could just be that McCartney, there's just a lot of maybe makeup, to have that youthful look. And no doubt he's had probably a lot of work done. Probably Botox and all this stuff to try and keep a young, youthful kind of look. But the thing was with me, I mean, with the real Paul, like with the whole Paul is dead thing, it's like, to me, like, if it wasn't the real Paul, then they all had this falling out at the end, with this kind of like almost like love-hate relationship they had at the end with the Beatles. Like, I don't know. And then you had, Lennon and McCartney. They had a big falling out. Lennon seemed to really hate McCartney, and I guess McCartney wasn't too fond of Lennon either. And, I think it came out, it was 1971 that Lennon wrote this scathing letter to Paul, and he said in it, first I just want to say, if it was a replacement, would he have wrote, like, this scathing letter to this replacement Paul? Someone who he only would have really known for about 4 or 5 years? Like, I don't think so, But Lennon said, in this letter, he said, quote, "I'm not ashamed of the Beatles," and then in brackets, "I didn't start it all, but some of the shit we took to make them so big." So I'll say that again. "I'm not ashamed of the Beatles, but some of the shit we took to make them so big." And I would think, just the way he worded it was kind of weird. It's like, why would he not just say, "I'm not ashamed of the group, Paul," or something like that? It's almost like when he's saying it, he's like, "some of the shit we took to make them so big." It's almost like, well, he's talking about like another entity. That's a little bit weird. That was something when I saw that, I was like, when I read that. I thought that's a little bit strange. But Lennon, I mean, he was very, he had some very interesting interviews after the Beatles, and I think around, was it 1971, 72, he had this therapy or something, and I think it maybe left him a little bit real angry and bitter with the world, and he's had a lot of shit that he had went through in his childhood and his teenage years. You could understand him kind of having that anger and hating the world, really. I mean, I get that with the stuff that happened with his mum, his dad never been around. But, Lennon was saying, stuff like, they had become craftsmen and that, the music, that basically it's a myth. So that was a little bit, like, what the hell does that mean, the music's a myth? I mean, is there something to get from this, or is he just kind of, like, referring to, like, the early Mersey beat songs they had, from 62, 63, when it was kind of like that bubblegum pop, the songs like Please Please Me and She Loves You with all the screaming girls. Is that kind of what maybe he means in terms of being a myth, that he never, at that point in 71, 72, he looks back and kind of like didn't really rate that kind of music? Like, maybe that's what he's referring to, and it was all just kind of like he felt like manufactured, because in many ways Beatles were, manufactured. But the whole thing of, did they write all their own songs or not? That is maybe, that's maybe debatable. I would say it is kind of debatable. But then there's also another theory that Mike had was about Beatles. Were they into the occult? And there's an audio of John Lennon saying something along the lines of, by 2012, Paul should be Jesus by then. Then there's another song, and I can't remember the name of it. There's one line Lennon sang, I've seen religion from Jesus to Paul. That's awful weird, to be putting your bandmate up on a pedestal like that. And then this maybe goes back to the whole thing of the whole theory of, the replacement, McCartney being brought in, and then the deal was that he was going to be the guy that leading the ship, so to speak, and he was going to be the main composer. And the thing is with that Let It Be film, it's pretty obvious that McCartney is the one leading the way, just from the way he's talking to people. We're talking to Lennon, talking to Harrison, the way he talks to Ringo. Lennon, when you see that film, it just kind of looks like he's just doing whatever. Like, he can't really be arsed, It's an interesting film to watch, that one, for sure. The original Let It Be film, then, the remastered Get Back. But, in closing, I would say that my closing thoughts would be that it's maybe possible that they didn't write all the songs, that are down as Lennon McCartney compositions. Just going from that Ringo clip, that I was saying before, from the Anthology documentary. But the thing is, with that clip, it is possible that it's been taken out of context. It could be easy to take it out of context. We don't know what exactly the question was that he was asked. Maybe it could have been something in relation, like, how were you and George kind of like managing with Lennon and McCartney, with all the songs, that they were churning out, all the songs that they were apparently writing. But the Paul McCartney dying in 1966 theory, no, that's, I can't believe that. No, to me, there's no way. I mean, yes, there are photos you'll see of Paul McCartney. He does look slightly different, but, we all can have that thing, as we get older, as we age, we will look differently, right? So, no, I'm not sold on that theory. I mean, it's possible that, that lookalikes have been used for, personal appearances, for stuff like movie premieres, stuff like that. But I don't believe, though, that James Paul McCartney, who was born in 1942, you could say the biological Paul McCartney, died in 1966 and was replaced. No, I don't believe that one. But anyway, guys, those are my thoughts. I hope you appreciated the videos, enjoyed them. Okay, take care, guys. Peace.